Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, with my co host and partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is great to be here. And we have another fabulous interview for you today. We've got best-selling author and award-winning author Amanda Flowers with us. She writes mysteries for various ages, not just adults, but also for children and young adults. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's
We
great.
love having you here. Yes.
Absolutely. So I like to start off the show with asking a question about your childhood.
Okay.
So I'm very interested to know if you felt your childhood contributed to you becoming an author, if it
Mhm.
contributed to what you write, and what kind of a kid were you? Were you an introvert? Were you an extrovert? Were you an athlete? Were you had stuck in books? Tell us about it.
I definitely was not an athlete. I was very much an introvert with my nose stuck in books. As soon as I started reading, that was it for me. I just loved books. And yes, very much my childhood was influenced me being a writer. My mother would take us to multiple libraries a week and we would get all like big stacks of books and read, and so would she. My mother read, she she was a pastor at a church. She had two children. She was married, and she still read 7 or 8 novels every week, like across
Wow.
genres from fantasy to mystery to sci-fi. She read everything. Um, so that influenced me immensely. And her favorite genre was mystery. So
Mhm.
then I kind of when I was growing up, there wasn't really like young adult fiction. There was like a few young adult books like, R.L. Stein or Christopher Pike, like those kind of spooky kind of books. And then there was like Nancy Drew files and things like that. But there wasn't this whole like major genre that there is today. So I really jumped from chapter books to what are considered cozy mysteries, which means the mystery the death is off page. There's no like sex and violence in the book, and it's more like a whodunit Agatha Christie style mystery. Because that was my mom was reading, so if I ran out of something to read, I knew she had a huge stack of books in her room, so I would just take them. And my parents were they let us read anything, like as long as we were reading, they were happy about it. So yeah, and then when I was in 6th grade, I wrote a story that was supposed to be nonfiction, but I fictionalized it about being stuck on top of a Ferris wheel at an amusement park and the Ferris wheel catching on fire and my brother falling out. And I thought, and the class laughed when I had to read it in front of them. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to make stories to make people happy and laugh and things like that. So, kind of, yeah, definitely my childhood was a huge part about it.
Cool.
So when did you end up actually deciding to write professionally? I mean, have you had
Um,
other careers or how did this?
yeah. Yeah, it would really be that moment when I was like 11 years old in 6th grade. I went home. I told my dad, I was like, you and mom are going to be great because I'm going to be like this really famous rich writer and you're going to get to, retire early. And he's like, I think you'll definitely make it because I'm pretty stubborn and determined even as a child. But he said, we probably need a backup plan. So when I was 11, my dad wrote on he got out his computer and at the time it was like Excel like 90 something, who knows what it was, and he made a spreadsheet of possible jobs I could have until I like made it and could retire to write full time, and the number one on the list was a librarian. So that's what I was. I my dad and I made a plan when I was 11 and then I executed the plan and now I write full time. I was a librarian for 15 years before I left.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So your whole life, I mean,
Yeah.
even as a
Essentially.
librarian, you've been surrounded by books. It's so cool.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, I miss real libraries, I guess you would say, because there's
Mhm.
not as many. And then the other thing, I don't know what yours was like. A lot of them become very modern and high tech and electronic. But
Mhm.
I grew up long time ago. But we had an old Carnegie library. And I
Yeah.
remember the smell when you walk in there of the old musty pages and the furniture polish where they would polish the tables. But I remember the day I got my first library card and it changed everything. Like, wow, you're an adult all of a sudden. You can go borrow
Right.
books.
It's your first identification, really.
So do you see that when you were working at the library, these kids that come in, it's like their first time and they're a little intimidated, and then you walk them through and it's kind of like, whoa, see that light come on.
Yeah, for sure. I think when children get their first library card, they're just so proud of it, and it's just so fun that, like, if they might have like a little cartoon character wallet and they tuck it. It's the only thing in there with like also a sticker, like, or maybe like some like fire department thing they have in there that's like that they went to
Exactly.
preschool fire department school or something. So it's really cool. And, libraries are amazing places and do
Yep.
so much great work. I loved being a librarian. It was very hard to leave, but it just got to a tipping point where I was like, I can't do both of these jobs well full time. And
Exactly.
obviously the writing was the dream job, and I'm very happy with it.
But well, you've obviously published a lot of books, and you have several series. Tell us a little bit about some of your series that you've enjoyed writing.
Yeah, I write right now. I've written I've published, I think I'm at 54 novels. In June will be my 15th anniversary of being published. So it was a pretty brisk schedule. Um, but right now I'm writing cozy Amish mysteries for adults. So these are funny, light mysteries in the vein of a Hallmark movie and mystery kind of book. And I have a couple series in that. And then I also write historical mysteries.
Hmm.
So, and I was writing cozies for years and years, but I didn't start writing historical until I retired, not according to the state of Ohio, because I'm in Ohio, but like I retired from being a librarian because they're just so much more time consuming because of obviously the research and things like that. But I always wanted to. So my first historical series is the Emily Dickinson Mysteries.
Okay.
Um, and
And
then
what time period do you usually write in when you?
yeah, so my time period is anything American history, because that's like my specialty, between the War of 1812 up to 1920. So I really like
Okay.
the 19th century, the turn of industrialization and all of that, and the Civil War, which can be a little difficult topic to write about, but I just find it fascinating how it still like influences the world today, like so long after it still has a major impact on American history as the Civil War and everything.
What drew you to see? One of my favorite
Mhm.
authors is Linda Castillo, and she writes Amish things, and I just love how she gets into that community, which is a very
Yeah,
interesting community,
yeah,
very admirable in many, many ways. What
yeah.
led you to start writing about the Amish community? I know there's a big Amish community in Ohio.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So to Pennsylvania, Ohio's the second highest Amish population, and I actually was looking at some statistics early like last week, and they estimate there's 60 to 80,000 Amish in Ohio.
Wow.
Um, so when I was first a librarian, when I graduated from, I went to college and then I went to graduate school to get my master's in library science. The first job I got was for a library in Amish country. So I was there 3 years, really wasn't thinking I was gonna write about the Amish. I just was in the midst of rural Ohio, working at a library, saw Amish every day. The Amish do use the library, um, depending how strict their bishop is and whatnot, but many, many of them do. And so I'm sorry, my cat keeps me out.
That's
um,
fine.
So when I was published later, just writing like contemporary cozies, my agent asked, like, got anything else? And I mentioned to her that, well, I used to be a librarian in Amish country, and I kind of like, you know, it was like right at the like 2008, 2010. So it was right like the height of Amish fiction. And so it was a good fit for me, but it wasn't moving there wasn't the intention to write about it, just kind of life experience led to me writing about it. But you do mention Linda Castile, and I have a funny story about her. She's like a friend of mine, and she's so sweet. And she comes to Ohio almost every year to do her book tour. And she almost always invites me to like do an event with her. Well, years before that, when I first met her, we were at BoucherCon, which is the World Mystery
Right.
Convention, and it was at Cleveland. So she was there, and because it was in Ohio, they did a Amish mystery panel. So they had probably like five. There's not as many Amish mystery authors anymore, but Linda and I were on the panel, and the person asking the questions told us to put us in order of like how scary our books are. So Linda was first, and then he told me to go out in the hallway. That gives you any idea of the level of scary of my books. And that was 2000, maybe 11 or something. Like, it was a long time ago, and we still
Yes.
laugh about it. But she's the sweetest person, even though her books are.
But she doesn't pull punches. Her stories get down and dirty, and
Oh
I
yeah,
like them. But she seems to have a great respect for the Amish community through all of this, and I'm assuming the same. Do you have is the community welcoming of your stories? And how do you navigate that world without stepping on toes and all that, which can happen? I mean, Linda manages to do it. She steps on toes all the time, it seems, but in her stories. But
has a lot of great friends that are Amish.
good,
I know when she comes back to Ohio, she talks about visiting them and things like that. And I know several Amish as well. Um, and they they just have, for the most part, embraced the books. And then it's the whole gamut. Sometimes I'll have a book signing down in Amish country, and I remember one time an older Amish gentleman came up and saw my books with, clearly they had an Amish theme by the cover, and he was just like, and then walked away. But then, my books are geared mostly towards women, so like it also might not just been his jam to write, like kind of like
exactly.
not his genre. But they're really supportive. There's several Amish
Good.
country bookstores down there, and anytime I go in and sign stock, they always have my books, and they say the Amish come in the
Good.
library too. The library down there is real supportive, and they have my book on the bookmobile, because that's how most Amish get their books, is they go to the Amish schools, so the kids and their moms come on and
Hmm.
get books and stuff. So
Oh, that's cool. So I
yeah.
have a question about your process. How do you write? Where do you get your inspiration? And, what's your process for actually writing an entire novel?
Well, my process is very messy. I am 100% a pantser, which isn't the easiest way to write a mystery. But at this point, my agent, every time I'll like kind of whine and moan about how hard this is, and she's like, "This is just part of your process. You have to cry like about halfway through, and then you
Exactly.
figure it out." But usually what I write first is a fast draft. So it's not a pretty thing. I don't show it to anyone at all. And then where I really get into shaping the story is I'm a big, big reviser. I will revise a book 5 or 6 times before I turn it in, like beginning to end, just kind of writing over top of it. Um, and that's where I'm like, oh, okay, this is a story is coming together. The first draft that's where I break down in tears, because I'm like, I don't know why I killed the person, and that kind of stuff.
Yes. Well, we're exactly the same. I do the same thing, and I do write the first draft fast. It comes out to be maybe 65 even thousand words, and that's about it.
Yeah,
Then I go write the story, and I go through 5 or 6 drafts like you. But exactly, I call it the 40,000 word panic. You get to
yeah,
that point and say, "This story's not working. It's stupid. I'm a fraud. I don't know what I'm doing." But after you've written 20, 30 books, you say, "Shut up, stupid. You've been here before. Just keep
right,
writing."
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, even and I complained to my husband about it too, and he's like, "This is not like you do
Yeah.
this every time." Like I
Exactly.
know, I
When are
know,
you gonna learn?
I know. It's just, I did try to outline years ago because like every other writer, I went to a bunch of classes and
Mhm.
workshops, and um, and they said you should outline, and read all these books about outlining. So I wrote this beautiful outline. I can't even remember what book it was. It was long over a decade ago. And then I totally like scrapped it like while I
Yeah.
was writing. It just like went completely off. So I was like, oh my gosh, I wasted like a month of my life on
Right.
the world's most gorgeous outline. So since then, I've just kind of embraced the chaos.
Yeah, I found that after I outlined it, I'd already told the story. So writing it became actually harder because I'd
Yeah.
already told the story
Yeah.
to myself.
Yeah.
But then like you jump the rails, you
Yeah.
you jump the rails and go in every which direction anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
why waste the time? I like that.
Yeah.
So you got something new coming out.
Mhm.
Um, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my book coming out February 25th is called I Died for Beauty. It is the third in the Emily Dickinson mystery series. So, in this series, Emily Dickinson is the detective with the help of her maid, Willa Noble. Willa actually narrates the book, so it's kind of in the vein of a Sherlock Holmes Watson. And the reason I did that was because when I got the contract to write the Emily Dickinson mysteries, I was like, oh my gosh, she's a genius. How am I supposed to write like Emily Dickinson? And I was like, I need a lay person to tell her story because she's like on a different level of genius, and I didn't she just thinks differently, and that's what I like to show also in the book, like how she's so different from everyone around her with the way she sees the world and describes the world. So this third book is set in 1857, Amherst, Massachusetts, where Emily lived. That January was one of the worst snowstorms in American history. It was called the Cold Storm of 1857. Um, there was 8 feet of snow on some railways. Train tracks closed. People were cut off from supplies, and it was all the way from New England all the way to Washington, D.C. had snow too. So, or they called it Washington then. It wasn't a D.C. yet. So during that time, everybody was kind of insulated, and everyone was obviously freezing because after the snow, the temperatures dropped like way below zero. That's why it was referred to as the cold storm. So the biggest fear at the time really wasn't freezing to death, it was dying in fire because you're thinking this is 1857, how are you heating your house? By an open flame of some sort, in a stove, in a fireplace, what have you. So, and then another big issue at the time were most of the wealthy homes, like the Dickinsons, were staffed with Irish immigrants that were here from who escaped the potato famine in Ireland. So there's all these Irish immigrants that live in this small community in the middle of Amherst, which is historically accurate and true. And then they worked for the wealthy families or for Amherst College, which is still there today, and did maintenance, maid work, that sort of thing. And there's a fire in one of those houses in that little neighborhood, the Irish neighborhood. And Emily and Willow want to find out what happened because a little girl, her parents died in the fire, and they saved the little girl from who was ran away into the woods. So now they want to find out how to help this little girl. So by this point, this is Emily and Willa's third trip into being detectives, so they're a little more savvy. This book, they know a little bit more how the police work. They also know a little bit what to tell the police and what not to tell the police. This is the 1850s. Is you know, government's always had corruption, but at this time it was pretty like high on the list of things going on. There was a lot of bribery and old guys club as far as in government and authority and things like that. But their main focus is helping this little girl. And it's just been an absolute joy to write this series. It's truly, I tell my editor all the time, it's like they're the books of my heart. I've written over 50 books, but these books, the first one was Because I Could Not Stop for Death, which was nominated for an Edgar, and then it won the Agatha in 2023. And then the second one is I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died, and it was nominated for an Agatha. It didn't win, but I'm just so proud of this series. It's my favorite.
Well, I like the concept of having the narrator, not the protagonist. I mean, obviously, Gatsby's that way, and To Kill a Mockingbird's that way, and of
Right.
course, you mentioned Holmes. I don't think that's done enough now because the sidekick, so to speak, offers a view of the protagonist that the protagonist could never give without
Right.
being a conceit of some type. So
Right.
I love that. Was this something you said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, or it's just you started the story and said, this is what it has to be?
Well, it was just like, oh, I can't write like Emily writes, because part of my research is I read all of her poems, and then I also listened to them like on an audible, version, because listening to poetry is just, I think, as important as reading it.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know what she's saying half the time. Like it could be interpreted like 14 different ways. So I knew I had to create someone. And what was great about creating Willa as her maid, um, is Emily is so much on like another plane of thinking that she knows there's a class system, but she really blurs the line, while Willa is very aware that she knows Emily thinks they're friends, but she knows they're never going to be equals, at least as in society's terms. So she has to be very careful because Emily's like, call me Emily. And she's like, anytime they're around people, she's like very conscious of saying, Miss Dickinson, or Emily's like, come with me. And she's like, just basically like blow off your work for the day. We got to go find a killer. And like Willa, that's like a major problem for Willa because she knows there's ramifications with the head maid and also with Mr. and Mrs. Dickinson if the windows don't get washed or whatever. And Emily, she doesn't realize, because she's in a wealthy family, she's also ridiculously intelligent. There's some theories that she might have been on the spectrum too. So she just thinks on a different plane. And while Willa has her feet firmly on the ground, like she is in 1857, like in a second class, role as a servant, and she knows where she's supposed to be, um and she loves Emily and she wants to help her, but at the same time she knows there's ramifications that Emily is not aware of. So I love that, up down upstairs downstairs kind of situation.
Yeah.
And just inherent conflict. I mean, that's fantastic. So, okay, so tell us, the book comes out, you said February 25th, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And where can our viewers and listeners get your book?
You
By
can
the
get
way,
it.
beautiful, beautiful cover.
Oh,
Beautiful
thank you.
cover.
The covers are all gorgeous. It'll be available everywhere books are sold. It'll also be in libraries. It'll be on audio and ebook. So really anywhere that you want to get a book, you will be able to have access to it. It's also like on the Libby app if people like to read electronically through the library. So really any way you want to get it, you'll have access to it on the 25th.
Fantastic. Amanda Flower, it has been just such a pleasure having you. You're a great interview. I love your stories.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited to read more of your books. And we've got to have you back. So we'll have to
Absolutely,
stay in touch.
anytime.
You write, you're so prolific. Let us know when your next books are coming out. We're going to have you back for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. I have probably like 3 or 4 coming out this year. So
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
It's
I feel like
busy.
such a slacker.
No, 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 no.
No, 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 no. I understand. So where can people find you and reach you to find out all about you and purchase your books and things like that?
Yeah, you can find everything on amandaflower.com.
Okay.
Also, I'm very active on Instagram, which is Amanda Flower Author, I think's the handle. And then my Facebook is Author Amanda Flower, because
Okay. Yeah.
sometimes you don't get the handle for both that you want, but it's in the same vein. But I'm pretty active on both those platforms. My husband and I, if you do go there, you'll see a lot of cats. My husband and I have a cat rescue. Uh,
Ah,
so right now we're taking care of 18 kitty cats.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, we have a farm in Ohio, so we have the space for, so yeah, so it's a lot of cat pictures. So if you
My
love cats,
goodness.
it's a good one.
We had three and it was prevent defense. Yours
Yeah,
is like, I don't know, like chaos.
yeah, yeah. So, but I love it, and they're all have their own personalities, so it's
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Absolutely.
cool. Very cool. Well,
Well,
I mean, yeah,
I want,
go ahead, Kath.
I want to remind our viewers to please click the thumbs up. And if you're so inclined and enjoy these interviews, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a lot more interviews coming and we don't want you to miss anything. And again, Amanda, it's been just great to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you both for having me.
Thank you so much. It's just been a pleasure. So that concludes this show, and as you know, we will be back with other get to know interviews here on the Outliers YouTube channel. So until then, I'm DP Lyle with Kathleen Antrim, and of course with our wonderful guest Amanda Flower. And go buy her books and read her books. You'll be happy. Until next time.